There comes a time in every queer, in the closet, child teen's life where you see a show and you see a gay couple and you go, oh my God, I'm only going to think about this for the next couple of years. That was Klaine for me. I have proceeded to find other ships in the future, but Klaine was my OG. They were where I started. And so I am making this video in honor of all the people who had that obsession growing up. Hello and welcome to the video I have been waiting to make for my entire life. It is a Klaine retrospective timeline storyline video. My credentials are that I used to have a Klaine stan account on Instagram when I was a child, and I used to watch Glee as it came out. My first dance solo was to Don't Rain on My Parade before Glee came out, and then my dad watched Glee and he was like, oh my God, she's doing your song. And then my last dance solo was to Rose's Turn. Unfortunately, not the Glee version because my dance teacher wouldn't allow it, but it was dedicated to him nonetheless. With this video, I'm just gonna kind of go over season to season, what's happening, what songs are they singing, what's the vibe, but it's just gonna be a rundown as much as I can remember. If you're wondering if this mic is connected to anything, it is not because I couldn't get it to work. I got obsessed with Klaine when I was 13, and it took me almost 9 years later to figure out that I was a lesbian, so we're all on our own journeys.
Someone tell me, when is it my turn? Don't I get a dream for myself?
So we're gonna start out with season 1. This is only a Kurt season. Blaine is not in this season quite yet. A little backstory is actually both Darren Criss and Chris Colfer started the show a little different than most actors would. Chris Colfer auditioned for the role of Artie, and then they made the role Kurt for him because Chris Colfer was just so unique and special and just had that it factor. He ended up winning a Golden Globe, so it kind of worked out. Darren Criss auditioned for the role of Finn and did not get it. His time would come later, the second season. So Kurt is kind of dealing with his sexuality this season. He's very obviously very gay, with the way that he dresses, the way that he acts, just his all-around like attitude is just very clearly a gay man. His best friend in the first season is Mercedes, and him and Mercedes get really, really close, and then at a certain point, Mercedes is like, okay, so like, when are we gonna tell people that we're dating? And Kurt's like, huh? Mercedes is like, yeah, like, when are we gonna tell people that like we're seeing each other? And he's like, I have a crush on, and then he looks to the side, and he's looking at Finn, because he has a crush on his future stepbrother, Finn. Rachel's talking to Finn, so he's like, Rachel, I have a crush on Rachel. Mercedes is obviously heartbroken to have lost such a hunk, so she proceeds to break his car windows and sing Bust the Windows Out Your Car, which is so good, and I just felt like that was an important thing to add. Continuing on, Kurt ends up dealing more and more with his sexuality. He has a crush on Finn. He gets their parents to meet and fall in love, which is crazy because he thought, what should I do about my crush? I should make him
my stepbrother.
They fall in love, surprisingly, the parents, and Finn and Kurt end up living together. With that, it's kind of tough because they have to live in the basement together. It's a big basement, but Finn is very obviously uncomfortable with Kurt's advances, and Kurt is very much not getting the hint. And it's sad because obviously, you know, you want the queer character to get who they want, but not necessarily how Kurt was going about it. Kurt redoes the basement to be like, Finn's moving in, like, let's like make it nice. And Finn is like, what the hell did you do? He didn't like Kurt's reorganizing, so he proceeds to call all of Kurt's things the F slur, as one does. So he calls the lamp the F slur, he does all that, and then Kurt's dad comes down the stairs. And Kurt's dad earlier this season had been, you know, figured out that Kurt was gay. Kurt finally came out to him, and he's this like trucker looking guy. He owns a mechanic shop. You'd think that he would be like not okay with his son being gay, but it's kind of a nice flip of the narrative where Bert is actually really okay with it. He proceeds to, throughout the show, really prove that he cares about his son more than he cares about anything else. He's probably like the best character in Glee, if I were to say. So his dad comes downstairs and he sees that Finn is calling his son the F slur. So obviously he's upset and he's like, what'd you just call him? And then Kurt's like, no, it's fine. And he's like, no. When he says that word, he's talking about you. And that's not okay. I love you, Bert. Bert ends up talking to Finn later and they settle things. You know, Kurt's not 100% innocent in this situation and neither is Finn. And I think that it was kind of just a rough situation. But the F slur coming out just kind of wasn't okay. In the end, Finn ends up defending Kurt's honor before they sing Lady Gaga songs, and it's really awesome, and I love it. The final thing I'm going to mention about season 1 that is, I think, important to Kurt's story arc is eventually Finn and Bert get really, really close, and they're going to go to a game, and Kurt is really upset because he's feeling pretty left out of his dad and Finn's relationship, and his dad is the only person he has, so it's just really sad for him. He's not invited to plans with Finn, so Kurt does what, you know, any 15-year-old does, and he tries to become straight. For this week of songs, sings Mellencamp, saying that is the new him. He wears flannels, he wears a trucker hat, he gets with Brittany. And this is really, really funny because Brittany is like, I totally thought you were a capital G gay, but I'd love to keep my streak of kissing every guy in McKinley. So he invites her over. His dad comes down and is like, whoa, I thought you were gay. You told me you were gay. And Kurt's like, well, I guess things are different now. And he's like making out with Brittany. It's really, really funny because he's so obviously not into it. And she doesn't give a gaff about it at all. And then Kurt comes to school the next day and is thinking like, well, at least my dad's gonna like pay attention to me now. He's talking to Sue Sylvester. Sue's like, you've been skipping Cheerios practice. And then Kurt's like, well, I'm kind of depressed because my dad, like, because I'm gay, kind of has been leaving me out. And then Sue Sylvester's like, how do you know you're gay? You kids are so obsessed with labels. You know the only one who can label you? And then Kurt's like, me? Sue Sylvester's like, no, me, Sue Sylvester. That's just funny. And so then Kurt sings Rose's Turn. Kurt's dad watches it and they have a heart-to-heart moment where his dad's like, you're obviously not okay. I canceled plans with Finn. Like, you need to tell me what's going on. And Kurt ends up accepting himself as a gay man fully. Never once again does he question it. Season 1 was literally just Kurt dealing with his sexuality. All the way at the end of season 6, there is a flashback to season 1 where there's a whole episode entitled 2009, and so technically this takes place in this time. It is shown that Kurt and Blaine have crossed paths one time during episode 1 at a coffee shop, and little did they know. Mary, did you know?
Blow the candles out, looks like a solo tonight.
Welcome to season 2, the best season of Glee. So today I'm wearing a blazer to signify what is going to happen in this season. So season 2 is the beginning of Klaine. It is the best season in my opinion, and it's the best version of these characters out of all the versions of them that happen, and there's a lot of versions that we'll be getting into. So there's a total of 3 Klaine duets this season. It's Baby It's Cold Outside, Animal, and Candles by Hey Monday. We'll talk about Baby It's Cold Outside and Candles later. Blaine doesn't come in until episode 6, so the beginning is kind of setting up Kurt's loneliness and Kurt's, desire for romance. It starts off, there's a lot of bullying happening. It happens in season 1, but this season it's getting a little bit more intense. There's a specific bully, Dave Karofsky. He's gonna come up so freaking much, so please remember his name. He is really coming after Kurt. He has a vendetta for this kid. It gets physical, it gets verbal, all this stuff. It's just not okay. So we get to duets. This is going to be a duet competition happening. A new kid has entered school, and it is not Blaine. It is Sam. So rumor has it that Sam was actually supposed to be Kurt's love interest. I think those rumors have been debunked, but I love them, so I like to talk about them. Kurt and Sam meet, and Kurt asks Sam to do a duet with him because he thinks Sam is gay because he has bleached hair. On the other hand, somebody else likes him, and they're like, no, he's straight. And so it's kind of like a ongoing gag that they're like, is he straight? Is he gay? He agreed with Kurt to do a duet, but he really is like into football and that kind of stuff. Turns out he is straight, and eventually a lot of the Glee Club ends up convincing Kurt to cancel the duet with Sam because it will ruin his reputation, and doing a duet with the gay kid would mean that you're gay and therefore you're going to get targeted, which is really sad, and it really makes me sad for Kurt that like nobody is in his corner about this. So then we get to the episode 6 of season 2, Never Been Kissed. Now, this episode is a really, really big one. This is the episode where Blaine is introduced. At the beginning of the episode, Will Schuester is going over everybody that they're going up against for a competition. They list off these old people, and then they list off the Warblers and the New Directions, which is Kurt's Glee Club. Kurt goes to spy on the Warblers, and as he's walking down the stairs, there's a spiral staircase, he runs into a boy, and he's like, hey, where's the Warblers practice? And this boy's like, the Warblers are like rock stars. And then Blaine, that's the person he ran into. They shake hands. Blaine grabs Kurt's hand and runs down the hallway with him. It's amazing. This is their first time meeting, and they're holding hands, they're holding hands in like a really awkward way. I'm gonna show the picture here. It is so awkward the way they're holding hands, but God, I was eating it up like it was dinner or dessert. They get into the room, and Blaine's like, don't forget your jacket next time, new kid. And he like brushes off his shoulder, and then Blaine turns out to be literally the leader of the Warblers. Blaine, I believe, was supposed to be a senior. So it's really funny to me because he later is found out to be a sophomore. I think he was supposed to be a senior, but they kept him around for longer than Kurt because they wanted to, and I get that. But I just need to put it out there that he was a senior. So Blaine performs Teenage Dream. Kurt is enamored. He's staring at him. He's like, oh my God, is this guy looking at me? And Blaine's looking at Kurt too. And it's like, and then afterward, we find that Blaine and 2 of the other Warblers have sat Kurt down. They're like, okay, we know that you're spying on us. We know that you don't go here. What's going on? And then Kurt is like, aren't any of you guys gay? And Blaine is. He says the other 2 have girlfriends, but Blaine is like, I am gay. They end up getting the other boys to leave, and it's just Kurt and Blaine, and Kurt's kind of just confiding in Blaine. Blaine is like, I totally get it. I was chased out of my school. That's why I ended up at Dalton. So he can completely, identify with the way Kurt's feeling. And he's like, if there's one thing I wish I could have done with my bullies, I wish I could have gone back to them and stood up for myself. And so he's like, I ran away, but you don't have to, Kurt. And Kurt is really inspired by this. And you see him kind of take on this, moment of, aha! Right before the next time Karofsky bullies Kurt at school, Kurt is watching the girls perform, and he gets a text from Blaine that says courage. It's just really sweet. Kurt is, feeling like, okay, I'm going to be able to do this. And he's in the hallway, and Karofsky shoves Kurt. And Kurt goes, hey! And he chases after Karofsky into the locker room. And he's like, I'm talking to you. Karofsky's like, I'm gonna punch you. And then Kurt's like, you can punch the gay out of me more than I can punch the ignoramus out of you. And what does Karofsky do? He kisses Kurt. Hence the title, Never Been Kissed. This is Kurt's first kiss outside of Brittany, but this is his first kiss that counted. And Kurt is really sad about this, and he tells Blaine this later. Blaine goes to the school to help Kurt confront Karofsky and be like, hey, you are not alone. It's gonna be okay. Being gay is okay. And Karofsky proceeds to shove Blaine up against a chain link fence. That dude's just not coming out for a while. So it's really sad, but Blaine is really there for Kurt, and I think Kurt really needed somebody like that. He's really going through something really terrifying. Like, he's scared to go to school. I can relate. So next up, Kurt and Blaine, they hang out a lot, but they're just friends, which is unfortunate. They end up going out to dinner with Mercedes one day. During their dinner, she zones out and a little purse falls out of Kurt's mouth. And then Kurt and Blaine start going gay. Gay, 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 gay. And it's just really funny as a gay person because I am also gay. Gay, gay, gay. After all of this, the Dave debacle comes to a head. Kurt's dad proposes to Finn's mom and is like, we're gonna have a wedding. Same episode. Kurt is going to teach his dad how to dance and he's going to teach Finn how to dance too. Before this happens, Karofsky corners Kurt. He puts his finger on his chest and he goes, if you tell anyone, I will kill you. That's not good. And while he's teaching his dad and Finn how to dance, Karofsky makes a little gesture through the door while he's teaching Finn how to dance and his dad's like dancing on his own. And his dad goes, what was that? Who was that? And Finn goes, you tell him or I will. So Kurt goes, his name's Karofsky. He's been bullying me for a while now. And the father's intuition kicks in and Bert goes, you're not telling me everything. And Kurt goes, he threatened to kill me. The moment Bert finds out, he runs through the hallway and he shoves Karofsky against the locker. And it feels really good because no one has been beating this bitch up. They have a meeting with the principal, Sue, and she suspends Karofsky, which is amazing. They have the wedding. Finn dedicates a whole song to Kurt, and it's a really sweet moment. And then we find out that Karofsky appealed his suspension and he's coming back to school. That's just so messed up. His dad and stepmom look at each other and they go, we have a question we want to ask you. It cuts to the Glee Club where Will Schuester is saying that he has an idea for Kurt to get a solo. That's how you know Kurt will not be joining the New Directions for the rest of the season because no way they'd give Chris Cole for that solo. I wanted him to have it. There's no fucking way they were going to give it to him. Obviously, Kurt comes in, and Kurt's like, can I actually say something? I'm transferring to Dalton Academy, effective immediately. Yes! Kurt's going to Blaine's school because they have a zero tolerance, no bullying policy. And real. They're still just friends, which sucks. But alas, we move on. We keep going. Kurt auditions to be a part of the Warblers. He's not getting any solos because all the solos go to Blaine, respectfully. Kurt and Blaine sing Baby It's Cold Outside. This is the beginning of the Klaine Christmas duet. This is a staple of every single Glee Christmas episode. They're practicing it for Blaine to perform it with this random girl. Chris Colfer and Darren Criss have incredible chemistry. I think the way that they had to not be in the same room together for 10 years says a lot about just how good their chemistry was. It's really flirty. Blaine is like, you're gonna be better than the girl that I have to sing it with. And then we get to Valentine's Day. Blaine has a crush on somebody and he tells Kurt about it and he's like, I have a crush on somebody that I've been talking to for a while and I just think we really get along well and I love just the way that we have conversations and yada 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 yada. Kurt's like, oh my god, is this fucking play about us? So he's like, oh my god, I'm gonna help Blaine set up my Valentine's Day show. Turns out Blaine is in love with this dude named Jeremiah at the Gap, who is over 18, and Kurt reluctantly helps perform When I Get You Alone in the middle of the Gap, and Jeremiah is not too happy about it because A, he gets fired, and B, Blaine is a child. And then Kurt ends up admitting to Blaine and goes, I thought that you were gonna perform for me. I thought that I was the person that you had a crush on. And Blaine's like, you were a really great friend and I really love our friendship, but I don't feel that way about you. Kurt's like, fair. So he just continues crushing on Blaine. I have to take this off because I am inhaling hair. Next up in their milestones of friendship, Kurt invites Blaine to a party at Rachel's basement where Blaine proceeds to get pretty much blackout drunk and ends up playing Spin the Bottle and making out with Rachel and singing a duet with her. Now afterwards, Kurt, still being in love with Blaine, is like, well, you're not going to do that again, right? And Blaine's like, actually, I don't know. Blaine thinks that he might actually like Rachel. And so Kurt is obviously really, really upset. And instead of, being like, I'm upset because I have a crush on you, he becomes biphobic. It leads to one of my favorite lines in all of Glee where Blaine goes, I would say bye, but I wouldn't want to offend you. Blaine ends up going out on another date with Rachel. He thinks things are fine, and then they kiss. and he finds out. He's like, nope, I'm gay. I'm fully gay. Thank you, Rachel, for helping me. We get up to the episode Sexy. Basically, they're trying to sexify, direct quote by the way, their number for the competition because that's what the New Directions are doing. So the Warblers are going to get sexy. When they do the performance, Kurt is really bad at being sexy. He's making really awful, weird faces, and Blaine is weirded out. And so he's like, hey dude, do you know what you're doing with your face? And Kurt's like, no. So Blaine is trying to give Kurt a lesson on making sultry faces in the mirror, and then Kurt ends up getting really overwhelmed, and Kurt's like, I can't, I don't know the first thing about sex. And Blaine tries to explain a little bit of sex to him, and Kurt is like, la 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 la. He asks Blaine to leave, and Blaine ends up going to Kurt's dad the next day and is like, you just have to have the talk. And his dad's like, you're kind of overstepping, but sure. At the beginning of this conversation, it's really funny because Bert goes, are you gay or straight or what? And it just cracks me up because also, you don't have a crush on Kurt, yet you're sticking your nose into his business about his sex life. Sounds like somebody has a crush. Next, we move on to what I like to deem the sacrifice of Pavarotti, and I will explain why it's called that in just a moment. The episode original song is the start of something new for Klaine. Kurt, when he started being a warbler, was gifted a warbler, a bird. Its name is Pavarotti, and he watches the bird, and he's supposed to take care of it. Sadly, Pavarotti fucking kicks it. Pavarotti is dead. Kurt is really sad. He storms into the Warblers meeting wearing all black, and he sings Blackbird. Blackbird being one of my favorite Beatles songs. It's kind of an epic crossover, and while he's singing, the camera keeps flashing at Blaine. He starts out singing along, but then he kind of shifts himself a little bit, and he's staring at Kurt, and there is nothing but adoration in those beautiful big brown eyes. You can tell that this man has just fallen in love. Afterwards, Blaine ends up petitioning for the Warblers to let him do a duet. Kurt was gonna audition, and then Blaine's like, nope, I don't need audition. I want it to be Kurt. They have a meeting. They're bedazzling Pavarotti's casket, and Blaine's like,
Kurt, there's a moment when you say to yourself, oh, there you are. I've been looking for you for forever. Watching you sing Blackbird, that was a moment for me. About you. You moved me, Kurt. And singing this duet would be just an excuse to spend more time with you.
Talk about a rush. Talk about a fucking crazy rush. And then Blaine goes in, and they smooch. And then he pulls back. We take a breath. And then Blaine goes, we should probably get to practicing. And Kurt's like, I thought we were. And then they go back and kiss. But I love that scene. So Kurt and Blaine are officially together. So now that they're together, they go to regionals, they perform a duet together, Candles by Hey Monday, and they lose to the New Directions. Shocker. I actually think they should have won, low-key. So everyone at McKinley is kind of begging for Kurt to come back. Blaine is like, I'd be all for him going back if it wasn't for Karofsky. Sorry, I love when they're protective of each other. Kurt decides to go back to McKinley. Blaine, before Kurt is officially done with his first day, brings the entire Warbler troupe, and they sing Somewhere Only We Know to Kurt. It's so, so cute. And they're just so endgame for real. We then skip to junior prom. When Kurt asks Blaine to go to prom with him, Blaine explains that he actually did go to junior prom with a gay friend of his, and they did get beat up. And Kurt's like, it's okay if you want to skip. And then Blaine looks at him and goes, I'm crazy about you. That is just so good. They go to prom together. Blaine ends up performing, not Kurt. He performs I'm Not Gonna Teach Your Boyfriend How to Dance, which is so good. I think it is maybe one of the best Blaine songs in all of Glee. Then Kurt ends up winning prom queen, which really sucks. He storms out, he's crying. Blaine's like, you need to stop pacing. We can go if you want. And then Kurt's like,
no. Because if I leave, then that means that was okay, and I can't leave. And then Kurt goes, they can't touch me. They can't touch us, or what we have.
So he goes back in, he accepts his crown. Blaine walks up to Kurt and is like, can I have this dance? And of course Kurt says, yeah, and they dance, and it's really, really sweet. They dance to Dancing Queen. Now we're gonna wrap up the season. Nationals happens, Blaine's not there, yada, yada, yada. They lost Nationals. Kurt's explaining to Blaine everything that happened at Nationals. This is one of the last scenes of season 2. And they're sitting at a coffee table. Blaine's just sitting there like this. And he goes, I love you. And Kurt goes, I love you too. Like, that's awesome. This is the beginnings of Klaine. Yay!
Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Welcome to season 3. So, I would like to give a disclaimer that this is the beginning of Blaine's personality surgery. I think the blazer was what gave him his powers of calmness, and then also I think they aged him down this season. He's a junior now. At the top of the season, we see our first scene of Kurt and Blaine, where Kurt is like, hey, you told me you were going to decide if you were going to move to McKinley or not by the start of school year, and it's just, school has just started, so I'm just like a little confused. And Blaine was like, it's hard because the Warblers, you know, that's my family, but at the same time, like, I love you, and like, I want to be with you, so it's kind of hard to tell. Respectfully, if I was actually genuinely 16, I would not be moving schools for my partner, especially school 3 hours away. But anyway, Blaine ends up deciding to move schools. He shows up to McKinley in normal clothes. It's the first time we see him really like in normal clothes. And we find out that he has an affinity for bow ties, and that affinity stays for the rest of the show. And Kurt's like, oh my God. And he's like, wait, if you did this for me, don't do this for me, because like if you do this for me, then you're gonna grow resentful and it's gonna become an issue and da-da-da. And Blaine's like, I did this for me because I can't stand to be away from the person I love. Imagine being like a 13-year-old and hearing that. That's a rush that only I think a drug could maybe give someone. Blaine auditions to be in the New Directions. He's kind of like the new male lead. I know Finn has been the male lead previously. However, Finn's kind of having an identity crisis this season, so we'll find Blaine being the lead in a lot of things this season. It all kind of culminates into West Side Story, where Kurt really wants to get the lead of Tony. Rachel's playing Maria. Lea Michele didn't learn Spanish for that version of West Side Story. She just learned it for the other version of West Side Story. Big competition between Leah, Rachel. Obviously, Blaine is the perfect person for Tony. Kurt is not going to be playing Tony. Kurt really wants to play Tony because he needs, you know, those credits on his resume. Because Rachel and Kurt want to go to NIADA, which is basically like AMDA. You remember when we used to think that you needed good credits on your resume to get into college? Blaine obviously gets the role of Tony in West Side Story, and Kurt is really upset that he like wasn't really even considered for Tony. But what's really sweet is instead of, you know, being like angry at his boyfriend for like going out for the part, Kurt gives Blaine some flowers and is like, you are the only person right for this role, and I'm really happy for you. And Blaine is like, you always zig when I think you're about to zag, and I love that about you. And then they have an almost kiss, but they're in public, so sadly they do not kiss. Trust, it was an issue with me when I was a kid. I was so mad whenever they didn't kiss. I wanted to see them smooch. But anyway, they finally have a sex talk in the episode the first time, where Kurt asks, do you ever want to rip each other's clothes off? And Blaine is dancing while he's being asked this, and he goes, that's why they invented masturbation. So there's that. They end up like being like, we don't need to rush anything. Eventually, Blaine is like, plus tearing your clothes off would be a tall order. And Kurt goes, because of the layers. And Blaine goes, because of the layers. And they make out. And it's awesome. And then we meet Kurt's op. His name is Sebastian. Sebastian is the new Blaine of the Warblers. And Blaine goes back to the Warblers to kind of just see how his old friends are doing. Turns out, Sebastian is the new leader. He's heard a lot about Blaine, and he's really flirty when they first have like their first conversation, just them two. Sebastian goes, why'd you leave Dalton? Was it because you were bored of preppy, or you broke too many hearts to stay? Blaine should have shut that down, and I'm mad at him. And later, when he's in West Side Story rehearsal with Rachel, both of them are told that they aren't, how do you say... They are too virginal, and they need to lose their virginities. That is what their director, their friend Artie, told them, is that they need to lose their virginities, which is crazy note to give. And so Blaine's like, hey, Kurt, like, what if we just, like, went a little crazy one of these nights? And Kurt's like, didn't we literally just talk about this? But it's whatever. And then Kurt meets Sebastian when Blaine and Sebastian are out at coffee. Kurt runs into them. Once again, where the hell is the Lima Bean? This is the coffee shop. Where the hell is it? Because these schools are 3 hours away from each other. So what is happening? I'm so confused. Anyways, Sebastian's like trying to get with Blaine before Kurt gets to the table. Blaine's like, I have a boyfriend. And then Sebastian's like, I don't care if you don't. He's the worst. Blaine is like, I really care about my boyfriend. And then Kurt goes, hello? What are we doing? And then Blaine's like, this is my boyfriend I just told you about. And Sebastian's like, so Sebastian ends up inviting them out to a gay bar. And Kurt, feeling really threatened, is like, yeah, we'll go. Even though it's not really their scene. But they go to this gay bar with Sebastian. Blaine is dancing with Sebastian all night. Karofsky is there. Him and Kurt have a conversation, and Karofsky says that he's what they call a bear cub. Direct quote. Nevertheless, Kurt gets up and he starts dancing with Blaine, and Blaine's like really drunk. So when Kurt's trying to take Blaine home because he's a designated driver, Blaine is like, let's just do it in the back seat. Kurt's like, okay, you're funny, like, let's go. And Blaine's like, let's just do it, I don't care. And then Kurt's like, no. And Blaine's like, why not? And Kurt's like, it should be about us. So that's why I don't want to do it the same night you spent dancing with another guy, and that you're not even sober enough to remember it the next day. And Kurt ate that up. Like, Kurt, like, yeah. So then Blaine walks off and is like, I'm just going to walk home. And so we're just kind of at an impasse. The opening night of West Side Story happens, and they have a talk after the show. During this talk, Blaine reassures Kurt and says that he was right and that their first time shouldn't have been like that. And then Kurt goes, well, it sure beats the last time you were drunk and made out with Rachel. So, I mean, they're still making progress in their relationship. And then Kurt apologizes too. He says, I tried to be your gay bar superstar, but it turns out I'm just a silly romantic. And then Blaine responds, it isn't silly. Like, isn't that so good? Blaine's like, okay, well, will you go to the after party with me? And Kurt's like, no. I want to go back to your place. So, they go back to Blaine's place and they freak for the first time, and, you know, happy for them. That's about it. But anyway, this is just a general update. Santana gets outed for being a lesbian. It's really sad. So what do Kurt and Blaine do to make their lesbian friend feel better? Well, they sing Perfect by Pink at her. That is so gay man thing to do. Yeah. So next up is the Christmas special. So Blaine and Kurt are going to star in Artie's Christmas special, where it's going to be just like a TV kind of like thing, kind of similar to like the old black and white movies, but also featuring a little bit of the Star Wars Christmas episode. I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. And they get to be kind of the lead actors in this, which is really fun. They sing Let It Snow, which is their second Christmas duet, and it's really, really fun, and they act like they're married, and it's just like the greatest Christmas gift. I will say they also cut a scene that ended up being released later because they did a fundraiser where if they made enough donations, they would release this scene. Blaine gives Kurt a bubblegum wrapper ring, which I actually own. My friend did make it for me as a gift, so I just needed to humble brag about that because I don't really get to brag about that ever. It's a really cute scene, just being like, kind of like it's a promise ring, but like it's like homemade, it's thoughtful, it's sweet, and I don't know why they would have cut it from the original episode, but I guess it happens. Gay people getting cut. So we move on to when the New Directions is trying out doing Michael Jackson for their competition, but Sebastian from the Warblers overhears this and goes, no, we're gonna do MJ. So they end up having a sing-off in a parking lot where Sebastian proceeds to put rock salt into one of the slushies and tries to throw it in Kurt's face. Blaine, being the loving boyfriend he is, gets blinded. Now, there's actually a very good reason as to why Blaine got blinded in this episode. It's because Darren Criss booked Broadway and he needed to take a little break from the show. We move on to Valentine's Day. There's a gorilla suit man that keeps coming up to Kurt and giving him like little cards and flowers and balloons. And Kurt's like, oh my God, like Blaine, like he's like injured, but like he's thinking of me and he's sending me gifts. And that's what you would love to think from your partner who's sitting at home doing God knows what, like literally nothing. Like, what do you have to do, low-key? But no, the gorilla is not from Blaine. The gorilla is, inside the gorilla is Karofsky. Karofsky has a crush on Kurt. It's tough. It's a tough watch. Kurt's like, I have a boyfriend, Karofsky. I don't know what you're trying to do. So they proceed to just kind of go their separate ways. At the end of the Valentine's Day episode, Blaine comes back takes off his eye patch and he sings Love Shack with the rest of the Glee Club, and it's really, really fun. Next up, we reach a bit of an impasse with Kurt and Blaine's relationship. Blaine is acting a little distant towards Kurt, and when Kurt's like, hey, like, will you go to Between the Sheets with me, which is a sheet music store, don't have your mind in the gutter, Blaine's like kind of like, no, I don't think I'm gonna go. So Kurt goes by himself and he meets this boy named Chandler, and Chandler asks for Kurt's number, and Kurt's like, yeah. Eventually Blaine isn't happy about that, and he reads the phone and he's like, what is going on? And Kurt's like, well, you're being like odd, and like, you know, Chandler's like texting me and he's being nice to me, and it's like, it's not like he's actually cheating, but he's kind of emotionally cheating. But you can make a case for the fact that Blaine was doing that with Sebastian earlier, but I digress. I'm trying not to be too much of a Kurt stan. Blaine proceeds to talk to Kurt and be like, it's not right, but it's okay. And then he begins to sing, it's not right, but it's okay. And he starts it out by going, this is for anyone who's ever been cheated on. Talk about a great TV show.
This is for anyone who's ever been cheated on.
They proceed to go to couples counseling with the guidance counselor, who is not certified in couples counseling. And then Blaine calls out Kurt for putting bronzer in his moisturizer and says, what am I going to do with tan hands? Because I only moisturize my hands. That's good writing. Like, how do you think of that? Eventually, Blaine says that every convo is about Nyada and how it makes him feel like Kurt doesn't want to be with him anymore. And Kurt reassures him and says that he would never leave him, and they have a heart-to-heart and they're okay, and they survived. Klaine made it through the first big bump of their relationship. Let's hope they keep making it through them. Kurt ends up doing his college auditions, and he actually does a really, really great job. After that, they have prom. Both Kurt and Blaine go to the anti-prom because Kurt doesn't want to become prom queen again, and then Blaine doesn't want to go because the prom is themed, prehistoric themed, so you're not allowed to wear hair gel because that is not canon in the early days. So they have an anti-prom, but they end up going to prom, and Blaine ends up washing out the gel, and he has really, really fluffy hair. And Darren Criss has curly hair, but like, they like upped it. Like, that is not how Darren Criss's hair looks. Now we're ending the season with the graduation. Kurt is talking to Blaine and they're like, do we have to talk about this? And Blaine's like, we have to talk about this. And Kurt's like, I think we're gonna stay together. He says, when I picture the end of my life, it's like The Notebook, except instead of telling it about you, I'm telling it to you, and you're telling me to shut up because your show was on. And it's really sweet. I don't really know The Notebook though, so I kind of don't get the reference. Afterwards, we find out Kurt did not get into Nyada, which is messed up because his audition was better than Rachel's and she got into Nyada. After that, Kurt graduates. It's really, really sweet. Yada, yada, yada. The end of season 3. Klaine is still strong in season 3, feeling awesome.
Come what may.
Welcome to season 4. We are here, we are queer, we are ready to watch Glee. In season 4, there are 3 Klaine duets. So just a little heads up, this season is split half between New York and half between Ohio. There's just going to be 2 different storylines going on all at once. So just a heads up for like how the episodes are framed. So at the start of the season, we find that Kurt, because he did not get into Nyada, is working at the Lima Bean, which is the coffee shop that I don't know where the hell it is. And eventually Blaine pushes Kurt to just move to New York, even though he's not in school, just because he's really kind of unhappy in Ohio. And Blaine sings "It's Time" to him. It's a really, really cute moment. And yeah. So once Kurt moves to New York, he moves in with Rachel. Blaine is the new Rachel of the Glee Club because he is the best performer of them all. And they are long distance. They've been doing Skype dates, and Kurt has now started working at Vogue with Sarah Jessica Parker, which is really funny because Sex and the City. I haven't seen that show, but I can put it together. So long distance is actually kind of not working too well for them. Blaine is seen being really upset about this. In episode 4, we find that Blaine has been trying to reach out to Kurt, but Kurt has been really busy because he's working. And so Blaine is seen just feeling really disconnected, and he's really sad, and he's singing a song, and all of a sudden he gets a message on Facebook from this dude named Eli C. We never know what Eli C looks like, but we see this picture of a lighthouse, and it's really tough. We see that Blaine meets up with Eli C, and they hook up, and Blaine is seen being really regretful. He ends up showing up to New York to surprise Kurt after he cheats on him because he feels really guilty. And later, through Blaine singing Teenage Dream on the piano, Kurt realizes something is wrong. So Kurt is like, why do I feel like there's something going on? Blaine tells Kurt that he cheated on him and that it didn't mean anything, and Kurt is like, I can't believe you would do this, and gives him the silent treatment, and they are broken up. 4 episodes in, guys. I will say all of the other couples in the show also broke up, so it wasn't just them. It was just a way to get the ratings back up, and the writers were desperate, and they broke up every single couple. Next time we see Kurt and Blaine together, Blaine is in Greece, and Kurt goes home to McKinley to watch Greece. He kind of didn't want to go. He ends up regretting going because he does see Blaine, and Blaine is like, I'm so sorry. And Kurt's like, it was a mistake coming. I can't be back together with you because I can't trust you anymore. Blaine says that he feels like he lost the love of his life. There's a lot of opposing things going on. They don't talk for a while. Blaine is doing Glee Club and Kurt is working at Vogue. We finally get to the Thanksgiving episode. I know we've jumped a couple months, but nothing's happened with Klaine. It comes to Thanksgiving and Sarah Jessica Parker's character kind of helps Kurt get over Blaine and just kind of come to terms with it. Eventually, Kurt calls Blaine on Thanksgiving and is like, I really miss you. I forgive you. I want us to be okay again. And so they become friends again. Yay! So next up, Kurt gets into Niana. Woohoo, 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 yay, yay, yay. So now Kurt is no longer working at Vogue. He's a full-time student. And we get to Glee Actually, which is their Love Actually parody episode. And we find that Kurt's dad is visiting him in New York, and he tells Kurt that he has a Christmas gift for him, but he has to go pick it up. And so he sends Kurt off to Bryant Park, where they do ice skating. Picture of me and Melanie ice skating here. We actually did this because of them. Kurt finds out that Blaine was his gift, and they sing ba-doo-da-doo, bow, bow, White Christmas skating, and it's a really, really cute scene. And yeah, Blaine and Kurt are just friendly. I mean, obviously Blaine wants him back, but you know, there's nothing he can do about that. He's a cheater. Next up, we find out that back at McKinley, Tina has a crush on Blaine, and Tina proceeds to ask him to Sadie Hawkins dance, and Blaine says no, and then Blaine gets sick, and Tina, while Blaine is sleeping, rubs VapoRub all over his chest without permission. That's not cool. I want to bring this up because it will come up later. Next up, we also find out that Kurt in New York has joined another Glee club at his college, and he meets this guy named Adam. He's British, and he's really cute, and he's tall, and yeah, they bump into each other a lot, and then Kurt asks him out to coffee, and they start like casually dating. So yay! A little while later, we see that Will Schuester is getting married, and Kurt and Blaine are both going to this wedding. And the first way we're introduced to them in that episode is they are hooking up in a car in the backseat. Don't weddings bring out just the best in people? So they're hooking up, and yeah, it's really awesome. And then Mercedes interrupts them and is like, hey, I need you guys. She says, hey, I need my arm gaze. And so then they both go on her sides and they walk into the wedding with her. Later, they sing a duet, and it's really fun. It's called Just Can't Get Enough. At the wedding, also, Tina goes off on Kurt after their duet, is like, you need to stop leading Blaine on. And then Tina lets it slip about the VapoRub, and Kurt goes, did you VapoRape my ex-boyfriend? I've never heard that term before, but I can't say I've ever forgotten it since. He also calls Tina a hag. He goes, you're a hag, you're hagged out, you're in love with Blaine, it's creepy, stop. That's so funny. Afterwards, they sleep together after the wedding, and they stay in the same hotel room, and it's really, really sweet. After they sleep together, Blaine asks if they can be together again, and Kurt is not vibing with it. He's just like, nah. And fair. I mean, Blaine cheated, but seems like he got a good night. Next thing to happen in the Klaineverse is it's snowy in New York, and Kurt and his new boyfriend Adam and Rachel and her boyfriend and Santana are all snowed into their apartment, and while watching Moulin Rouge, Kurt imagines him and Blaine singing Come What May, and he starts crying because he misses Blaine. And Adam clocks it. He was like, you good? And then Santana's like, wasn't that the song that you and Blaine wanted to sing together at your wedding? And Kurt shuts it down. Adam later asks Kurt if he's really still in love with Blaine because he's been thinking a lot about this whole Moulin Rouge thing. And Kurt says he really wants to be over Blaine and Adam isn't just his rebound. So Adam says, let's find a new movie to be all sappy and cry over. And I think that's really sweet. I think Kurt deserved that after getting fucking cheated on. Blaine, I'm pissed at you. Later, this is just a little extra tidbit, is Blaine and Sue Sylvester are feuding, and Sue puts a sign in the sky, you know, like after the planes, and it says Blaine is a bottom, and I just wanted to put that out there because it's so funny. And Blaine is like, that's not true, not really. Later we find out that Blaine is crushing on Sam, and Sam kindly turns him down and is like, you're my best friend, but no. Next up at school, there is a... As somebody who has been through a school shooting, I can talk about this. During the school shooting episode of Glee, I remember watching that and being so upset because they show all the characters being scared, and I just remember Blaine never really said anything about Kurt, and I remember being like really upset about that. Like, he wouldn't want to say bye to the love of his life. Yeah. Next up, we find that Kurt is going down to Ohio because his dad unfortunately does have cancer, but fret not, his dad ends up being okay, but he is down in Lima while he's getting treated, and Blaine is noticing that Kurt is exhibiting OCD symptoms. I haven't taken my meds. I gotta take my meds. And Blaine presses him about it, and Kurt loses cool, and Blaine and friends offer their support during this scary time. Kurt later goes to McKinley, and Tina's still mad at him, so she goes, why are you here? And he goes, my dad has cancer. Good job, Tina. So then we find out that Kurt's dad is fine, and Blaine gives Bert a little rainbow pin. And we find out that he is asking Bert for Kurt's hand in marriage! Dude, you're a senior in high school. So obviously Kurt's dad is like, you guys are too young to understand what marriage means. And he says that if Blaine is so sure that they're meant to be, there's no need to rush. So after this, we know that Blaine is still going to go ahead with his plans. It's just kind of like a bit of a jump because they've been broken up this whole time. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, by the way, can I marry your son? That you cheated on, by the way. I'm not forgetting that. In the next episode, Kurt and Blaine go out with these two lesbians. Yes! Yes, I love lesbians! I love you, lesbians! And they're just talking about, like, how gay marriage is, like, becoming legal and yada, yada, yada. And they're like, you guys are such a cute couple. And Kurt's like, we're not dating. And you know Blaine was, like, crushed on the inside. Cheater! And the lesbians actually end up getting engaged at the table, which is crazy because Blaine's probably like, oh my god, like, this is a sign. Right before nationals, Blaine is talking to Kurt, and he's like, so, and he almost is like, will you marry me? Instead, he goes, can you come see us at nationals? He is so, can I ask something weird? So Kurt obviously says yes. He goes to nationals, and the season ends with the camera panning to behind Kurt and Blaine, and they're smiling at each other, and then you look at Blaine's hand, and he has a ring box in his hand. Oh my god. Oh my god. Season 4 is done. Thank you so much for watching. On to season 5.
You make me feel so young.
Welcome to season 5, the only season I own on DVD. I forgot to include in season 5, they get 5 duets. So we're gonna get started right at the top. It is 2 Beatles episodes to start off the season. Yes! Can I get a shout out to Paul McCartney? We started the season, and Blaine and Kurt are sitting on the steps, and Blaine's like, can we please be boyfriends again? And Kurt's like, last time we did long distance, you cheated on me. And Blaine's like, I promise I will never, ever, ever cheat on you again. And Kurt's like, you're gonna have to sign one of those non-cheating contracts from Oprah's website. And they get back together, and Blaine is like, I'm so glad that you decided to, like, date me again because I actually had something like set up. And Kurt's like, I actually have something planned because I'm tired of you singing at me. And so he starts singing at Blaine, but Blaine also starts singing at him. Apparently they had both opted in to have a marching band accompany them while they both sang Gotta Get You Into My Life separately, but then it became together. And then they have their reunion kiss. So as we know from the last season, Blaine has a little ring in his pocket, and this comes to a head at the end of this episode where Kurt is in the car with his dad and they're driving, and Kurt is like, I know that you're driving me to my engagement. And Bert's like, what? And Kurt's like, I know, I'm not stupid. And he's like, I don't know what I'm gonna say. And Bert gives him this whole talk being like, I'm not gonna tell you what I told Blaine when Blaine asked me. I want you to make this decision. And then he gives him like a whole talk about just like how like life is short and, you know, love is love. And Kurt gets out of the car. He was driven to Dalton Academy where Blaine and Kurt met for the first time. And everybody ever is there and they're singing All You Need Is Love to him. And then he goes down the staircase where Kurt and Blaine first met and Blaine proposes. It is just like, like I inject it. It is so good and it's so fun, and you just have to suspend your disbelief because Blaine is technically supposed to be 17 and Kurt is 18, and it's just a little goofy, but it's so sweet. And you know, going to the first place they met is really sweet. But once again, where the fuck is Dalton? Because it's 3 hours away from McKinley. Anyway, so they get engaged, and you may be wondering, Isabella, do you have any props to go with this? Well, the ring on my dang finger is the one that is their little engagement ring. I've had it since I was 13, and yeah, it's just been a really big part of my life. I wear it actually every day. But anyway, Kurt says yes. It's a really, really cute speech. I would recite it, but I've monologued too much in this video, I fear. Next up, Kurt gets a new friend in New York. It's played by Adam Lambert, and his name is Elliot, and they're in a Madonna cover band together. Kurt and Blaine are long distance, just like some random things that happen while they're long distance. Blaine gets caught twerking and goes viral, and Blaine is also the valedictorian because he's about to graduate high school, and Kurt tries to get a tattoo that says "It Gets Better," but it's spelled wrong, so he ends up getting like a cover-up to make it say "It's Got Bette Midler." After that, Blaine and Sam go to visit Kurt and Rachel in New York, and we find that Blaine is auditioning for NYADA, and he gets really nervous about it, and he's like, maybe I'll actually become like a doctor. But Kurt's like, dude, chill. He auditions for NYADA. It goes great. Later, we go back to school. Blaine is in school, and he really was missing Kurt, so he made a Muppet-style puppet of Kurt and brings him around school. He ends up getting detention for trying to steal Kurt's puppet back once it got taken from him, and he got detention, so he has to call Kurt to tell him that he couldn't come to New York. Kurt gets mad about this, because he's like, what the fuck do you mean you can't come to New York because you got caught trying to steal a puppet of me? Later in the season, this is the first... Sorry, just like I get choked up about it. This is the first season we don't get a Klaine Christmas duet. I guess they felt like they gave us enough with the engagement, but I'm like getting chills right now. Like, it's so upsetting. They do like a really bad Christmas episode. Anyway, we find out that Blaine gets into NYADA. Finally, they graduate. Blaine was valedictorian. It's really cute, yada, yada, yada. And Blaine moves to New York. He moves in with Kurt and Rachel. They go to school together, and Kurt starts feeling pretty crowded by Blaine. Blaine is just around all the time, and he's making a lot of, like, ruckus in the house, so Kurt goes to Elliot to complain about it. Once he comes back, after, you know, letting out some steam, Blaine is found to be moving furniture and saying that the house doesn't feel like it's his, and he wants to adjust it. And Kurt's pissed because he's like, why the fuck are you moving around all my furniture? Kurt is like, oh, I can't do this right now. And Blaine storms out and goes to Kurt's new friend Elliot's place and is like, you're trying to steal Kurt from me. I saw your little cinnamon roll selfie. He thinks that Elliot wants his man. But Elliot's like, Kurt talks about you all the time. I literally don't want him. Chill the hell out. So then Blaine ends up going back to the apartment. They end up having a conversation about boundaries, and they talk about how boundaries like aren't necessarily like walls you put up, but you know, making space for things to grow. Really, really adult of them. So Blaine ends up moving out, and they're gonna just live separately, even though they're engaged, so that's interesting. The very next episode, Kurt actually ends up getting beat up in an alleyway. It's a really sad episode, and, you know, Blaine is obviously like there for him through all of it. Kurt ends up healing and he's okay, but definitely changes, you know, Kurt's mindset. And we see this in the next episode called Tested, where Kurt is now buff. He's now really muscular. He has a great bod. I hated saying that. The episode starts out with, I'm sure you've heard me monologue this a million times, but it starts out with Blaine being like, I'm obsessed with food and I love New York because I love food. And he's real as hell for that. Like, I love New York for food. Kurt gets really buff and Blaine starts gaining some weight, which is fine. Blaine, in one of his monologues that he has, he talks about how he's not used to Kurt being the hot one. And I'm just like, wow. So you thought, I didn't like that. I didn't like that you talked about my boy like that. Later in this episode, Blaine asks for a date night and they decide that they're gonna go to a movie, and Kurt opens Blaine's computer to pull up the movie website. He ends up opening the laptop, and right in smack dab in his face is fratboyphysicals.com. And then Kurt's like, I didn't mean to see this, but And Blaine's like, oh. And Kurt's like, well, we haven't even been intimate in a week, so I guess this is what you've been doing. First of all, a week is too long for you? Try my life! Obviously, Kurt's upset with Blaine and he storms out. Eventually, Blaine waits for Kurt to come home, and Blaine admits that he feels like things have changed and that Kurt is going to leave him. Blaine kind of had a savior complex when he first came into Glee, like saving Kurt from Karofsky and all that stuff. And he was like, I don't protect you anymore. And Kurt's like, I don't need you to protect me. He's like, if being in a couple where we're the same gender is going to be like a race, I'd much rather run this race with you than against you. And Blaine apologizes and say they have to keep up their communication. They need to keep their communication on lock. And Blaine gets put on a diet. Like, let him eat. Like, he's in New York, guys. Now we're nearing the end of the season. Kurt gets the opportunity to sing for a New York socialite who is having a dance studio at Niata named after her. And Kurt wants Blaine to sing The Story of My Life with him for this whole gala. After it, June, the socialite, is like, oh my god, that was so good. Meet me at this place next week. And Kurt is like, OMG, yeah, I'm gonna meet you. And she's like, not you. So Kurt ends up telling Blaine, don't feel guilty, go to this event, that's a great opportunity. Like, he's supportive. I mean, obviously he's upset, but like, who wouldn't be, you know? So then Blaine has this meeting with June, and she's like, I'm gonna put together a whole show for everyone to see your talent. And Blaine's like, OMG, yay! And then Kurt can be in it, and she's like, no. And she tells him to break off the engagement since they will fall out of love anyways. Then Blaine ends up talking to Kurt afterwards, and he's like, how did the meeting go? And Blaine's like, oh, she's putting on this whole, you know, show for me, and you're in it. Liar. Freaking liar. Next in the episode order, we see that Chris Colfer actually wrote an episode. Talk about something I wanted. Basically, Kurt is putting on a production of Peter Pan at a old folks home of retired performers, and none of his friends have been making the effort to hang out with him, which is something I've noticed throughout the season, so I'm glad that Chris Colfer knew Kurt was kind of getting the short end of the stick. The person playing Peter, because they're old, dies, so he has to be Peter. Blaine supported him through all of it, and I think that is important. So now we get to the season finale. They've been engaged for an entire season now. Like, let's talk about that. And they've had so many bumps in the road, but you know what this means? A marriage soon. Kurt still thinks he's in that showcase with Blaine, and Blaine won't tell him that he's not. Eventually, Blaine begs June to let Kurt even have one line, and she's like, no, because I'm putting my whole career on the line for this show, and I'm not having somebody I don't believe in. Put some respect on my boy's name. Golden Globe winner, by the way. Basically, in true Teenage Dream acoustic version fashion, Darren Criss performs a beautiful acoustic song on the piano, and Kurt walks in and is like, that was really good. Why are you really sad? And Blaine's like, I lied to you. And Kurt's like, what the hell? Later, Kurt and Blaine have a talk on the stoop outside their house. Blaine and Kurt are feeding pigeons, and Blaine says that he doesn't want to do the showcase anymore, and Kurt talks about flying and how relationships are similar because you never know when the person you give your heart to will drop it. And Blaine apologizes, but Kurt stops him and says he's not mad. He explains that his trust is a choice, and that he has chosen to trust Blaine. Blaine ends up saying that all this bird talk is getting him turned on, and they go inside to probably do things that I don't need to see. I don't need to see it. Later, Blaine ends up performing in the showcase, and June talks to Kurt during it and is like, "You're very admirable for showing up and being a good friend." And Kurt's like, "Nothing will come between us, bitch." So, let's hope. Blaine ends up singing American Boy and invites Kurt up on the stage with him because no one is more important than him. And I gotta give kudos because, you know, that is your fiance. You should be putting him first. Like, that is your person. So he goes against June and he has them sing it, and it's really, really cute. And yay! So now we get to the very last, and we find out that everybody is moving to different places. Kurt and Blaine are still going to Niata, so they're planning on staying, so they're gonna move in together and be, you know, a living together couple. And there's only one more season of Glee, so, like, you know, who knows what could happen, but hopefully not much, right? Yeah. Anyway, that was the end of season 5. I love season 5. I love their engaged era. I know they, like, kind of have a lot of tiffs, but I feel like that's just what comes with giving a couple more screen time, is, like, no one other than the people who, like, really stand the character are gonna care unless they're, like, having some sort of conflict. So I'm happy that they're still together. I'm happy that they're engaged. I'm happy that gay marriage is still legal in America right now.
Ooh, somebody loves you.
Dun 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 dun. Welcome to season 6 of Glee. Yay, can you see my veil? Because it's Klaine marriage time, right? Because they were engaged last season, so that would make sense, right? Wrong. They broke up. There's a 1-year time jump, and they broke up. I forgot to include in season 6, they get 3 duets. It's a really tough loss because I was patiently waiting for this season to come out, and then there is 3 duets this season. Don't worry about Klaine. We'll still be getting their beautiful voices together. Blaine is found to be, now after this 1-year time jump, in Ohio, and he's now the new coach of the Warblers because the academic advisor had Ebola or something, as he says. Him and Kurt split in New York due to just being stuck alone together, and Blaine's grades after that dropped and he had to leave college, hence why he is back in Chicago. In Ohio. Kurt is shown to still be in New York. He tries to go on a date with this random dude, but before the dude even shows up, he gets flashbacks to his breakup with Blaine, and he ends up not going through with the date. Their breakup entailed Kurt waiting at the dinner table while Blaine shows up late because of wedding planning. Kurt is being hostile and mad that Blaine is late, and it blows up into Kurt saying they keep arguing over little stuff and they never get along these days. Blaine asks if he even wants to get married, and Kurt says maybe not. Kurt says that he doesn't want to keep dragging on this relationship until they hate each other. They break up, and Blaine says that he loves Kurt, and Kurt goes, "I love you too." It's really sad, and Blaine was really taken aback, and then Blaine goes, "I will never forgive you for this." So fingers crossed he forgives him for this in this season. Kurt ends up, after this time jump as well, going back to Ohio for a project that he's doing for school. He has, like, a semester where he has to, like, do, like, some sort of, like, arts admin job, and he ends up working with Rachel as the new leader of the McKinley Glee Club. When Kurt comes back, he tells Rachel that he wants to win Blaine back and that Blaine is the love of his life and he regrets ever letting him go. So Rachel ends up setting up a meeting of him and Blaine so that they can have a conversation and Kurt can hopefully win Blaine back. Blaine ends up meeting Kurt at a gay bar where Kurt starts out their conversation by being like, "I want you back. I'm trying to win you back." Blaine is really taken aback by this and he goes, "I'm seeing someone." He wanted to tell Kurt in person about him seeing somebody because not only is he seeing somebody, he's seeing Dave Karofsky. He's seeing Kurt's high school bully. Who the fuck came up with this? It's so ridiculous and it made me so mad. So Karofsky shows up at the gay bar, by the way, and he's like, "I hope there's, like, not any hard feelings. Like, me and Blaine just met at this bar, like, a little while ago, and he was talking to me about you, and I told Blaine how you're so understanding about when I came to terms with my sexuality, like, all the bullying and stuff." But basically, after Kurt finds this out, he's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And then he goes to the bathroom and cries. Later, Kurt sees Blaine and Dave snuggled up at like a homecoming event at McKinley, and he is really sad. Moving on, Kurt and Blaine see each other at the sheet music store Between the Sheets. They both sing It's Too Late by Carole King, reminiscing on how they low-key will never get over one another. Later, we find out that Brittany and Santana are engaged, and because of Kurt's experience with getting engaged to your high school sweetheart, he is not too kind about it, and he says that it's a bad decision, and Santana tells him off. So Kurt obviously still has a very open wound about marriages. Later, it's revealed that Sue Sylvester is actually the biggest Klaine stan of all time. And she has a hurt locker where she has all of like the people that she hates and all the awful things she's gonna do to them. But behind her hurt locker is her Klaine locker, which is a locker full of cut out pictures of Kurt and Blaine like kissing and like doing a bunch of stuff. And we just find out that she's been obsessed with them and quote, their tender man love. Sue's dream is basically to be the flower girl at their fabulous gay wedding. So we find out that Sue has been plotting. There's a competition between both the Warblers and the McKinley Glee Club that both of them are coaches of, and they go to take an elevator together, and we find out that it's not an elevator, and it was actually a really well-made trap that Sue made to get them stuck into a room together where they have to do whatever she says. She ends up having a little puppet, Jigsaw, come into the room and say, you guys have to make out or else I'm not gonna let you out of here. And so they're like, haha, you're funny, like we're not doing that. And then she's like, okay, you're locked in. And then Jigsaw ends up bringing like a picnic for them to have like a romantic picnic. I get it, like she's like real as hell for that. And they end up talking in the elevator and just like playing games. Even like in the games, they can reminisce about their past relationship. Unfortunately, Blaine brings up Karofsky. That wasn't cool. Kind of ruined the vibe. Eventually, Kurt and Blaine are like, fine, we'll just kiss. And they kiss, but it's like just like a peck. And then Sue's like, that's not good enough. Eventually, later, you know, they go to sleep, they wake up, they've been gone for a whole day. Sue comes in and she's like, well, you guys aren't going to do anything, so I am going to fill the room with these pheromones to make you feel a certain way. And so they're like, fuck, we just gotta make out. So they make out, and it's a passionate make out. Like, I can't lie. Like, it's like when they pulled apart, like they did not want that to end. They end up getting out of the elevator and they're free to live another day of being apart. Later, Kurt starts online dating and he gets catfished by this man named Walter. He's just older than his picture, so not necessarily like a full catfish, but like still a catfish. They get along well, so Kurt's like, I'm gonna try this. So they start dating. Sue ends up showing up at one of their dates wearing a pin of Klaine and gives Walter a pin of Klaine and makes fun of his age, and Sue's just really putting in the work this season. Sue also puts a bear in Karofsky and Blaine's apartment. She also pulls up their family trees and says that they're second cousins, which I don't think is true, but Blaine and Karofsky really do have to consider the fact that they might be second cousins and they should probably break up so Kurt and Blaine can be together. Later in the season, Kurt and Blaine end up doing a duet for a goodbye night to Rachel's basement. Remember that basement from when Rachel and Blaine made out so long ago? The good old days. Kurt ends up rigging it because it's like a spinning wheel, and Kurt rigs it to pick Blaine's name, and they do a duet, and Blaine is like, please do not tell Karofsky that we're doing a duet. And Kurt's like, what? It's like, he jealous? And Blaine's like, no, I just think like Karofsky thinks that something's gonna happen between us. Girl, everyone thinks something's gonna happen between you. They do the duet, and while the duet's happening, they keep staring at each other like, guys, something gay is happening. And then when Blaine has to leave, Kurt walks him out, and they reminisce on their first duet about Baby It's Cold Outside. Once again, the good old days. I miss season 2. You know, they're talking, and then Blaine kisses Kurt. And then walks away. Methinks Blaine wants to get back together! Yay! Later, Blaine goes back to his apartment with Karofsky, and Karofsky's like, okay, something's not right. And Blaine's like, yeah, I kissed Kurt. And Karofsky's like, fair. He's not actually like fair, but he's like, I kind of suspected this would happen. They break up, and Blaine is still in love with Kurt. After that, Blaine is like, okay, I gotta get Kurt now. So he runs. It's like a montage. He's running. They do a lot of running. He runs to McKinley to like be like, Kurt, we should be together. But what does he walk into? Kurt and Walter are getting ready to go on a double date. So Blaine doesn't say anything, and Kurt is left to date that old man another day. Next up, we get to the wedding episode. Dun 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 dun. Brittany and Santana are getting married, and Kurt and Blaine are obviously part of the bridal shower. When Kurt is talking to Walter about the wedding, Kurt ends up coming out and being like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go to the wedding with Blaine." And Walter's like, "Young love is so awesome. Reach out and grab it." And it's like this whole montage where he's like giving a monologue. Kurt's like running through the streets because, again, they love to run. And he runs up to Blaine's apartment. He knocks on the door. Blaine's opening the apartment door. And you see that Blaine has been packing everything up because him and Karofsky have broken up. And Kurt's like, "I love you. I want to go to the wedding with you. Like, I want to be together forever. Like, unless there's anyone else." And Blaine goes, "There is nobody else." And then they kiss. Yes, 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 yes. They're back together. Finally, finally. I don't know why they had to break them apart. That was so fucking stupid just to get me to watch the damn show. I would watch it anyway. So Kurt and Blaine are back together for the wedding, and they're just going as wedding dates. It's really, really sweet and cute and love. Sue tells them there is an emergency happening with the brides and they need to go back to talk to them. And they walk into the room and they find that there is 2 cardboard cutouts of their faces with black tuxes because they're previously wearing white tuxes. And they're like, "What is happening?" And Brittany's like, "So here's the tea. I actually set up my wedding for you guys to get married to." Like, what? Imagine that. Imagine experiencing that for like your favorite couple. Like, surprise wedding, bitch. Kurt's like, what? And he's like, "We don't even have rings." And Sue's like, "Gotcha." And she had 2 rings for them. Kurt's like, I don't know. And then Blaine's like, "I don't know either, but wait, I love you. And you're the only person for me." And that's right, Blaine. He is the only person for you. Eventually, they decide to get married. They get married to At Last, which is one of my favorite songs, like, ever. I love that song, so it was just really special for them to get married to one of my favorite songs. But yeah, they get married. They sing a song with Brittany and Santana. I have their wedding band. But I didn't actually buy the one on Fox because it looked the exact same, but it was $60. So now they go on their honeymoon, they come back, and we find out that Dalton Academy has burned to the ground. They end up merging Glee clubs so that they can still compete because Dalton wants to compete. Eventually their Glee club wins nationals and they come back home, and Kurt shows Blaine that he actually has a time capsule in a locker at McKinley, and he's like, "Here's all of my favorite memories. Like, I wanted to remember everything about high school and all the fun times we had." And Blaine tears up while Kurt's doing this, and Kurt's like, "What's up?" And Blaine's like, "You're the only person who would do this. And I love you." And Kurt's like, "I love you too." And they kiss and they're married, and they're so cute, and they're married. And they're married, by the way. After this, the next time we see them is in a time skip. It is a 10-year time skip, which is insane. Their credentials now, 10 years in the future, is they are the first to star in an LGBTQ version of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And we see them go to a elementary school to perform, you know, a little song because they're guest speakers, singers at this elementary school. And then we find out, this is, okay, I need to preface this by what I'm about to say was actually like, that was probably the most I've ever sobbed at a television show, is probably what I'm about to tell you. Kurt and Blaine go to give Rachel some fancy juices before she goes to accept her Tony at the Tony Awards. And when Rachel gets up, you see that she's pregnant. And we find out that she was their surrogate. They're gonna be dads! They're gonna have kids! Oh my god! Injected! They are having a baby, and it's just so sweet, and it's exciting. And then at the very end of the show, every person who's ever been on Glee who could be there saying, "I lived," and the show ended, and the show is over. Thank you so much for watching my Klaine timeline. I know that my speed of explaining the story was a little wonky because there are some parts I just really like and some parts I don't care for. This is for you, Abby. I hope that you now have a great understanding of Klaine and can use it in your future. I hope that Klaine's child is out there just living their life, and life is worth a living. God bless Klaine, everybody. Whew.